grieving in many different ways, not necessarily grieving so much over the death of a loved one, but we can grieve in many different ways for many different reasons. And so, for that reason, I think that this particular topic is so important, especially when it's directed at men
Yes.
who have the smallest skill set out of everybody when it comes to dealing with this particular topic. So I thank you for having me on because
Mhm.
this is going to help somebody.
Yes, yes, yes. And the topic today that we're talking about is OCD. And you are very well equipped to talk about this subject. And I just have a few questions for you.
Sure.
The first one is how how did you find out that you had OCD?
So the signs began to appear when I was about 12 years old.
Hmm.
And it came about as a result of some post traumatic stress disorder. When I was 8 years old, my mom and my dad divorced. Nothing unusual there. Everybody goes through that at some point, it seems like. And it was a very contentious divorce. My mom and dad didn't get along. My mom was mentally ill. And so my mom and dad didn't get along. They separated, and I moved in with my dad into an apartment. And my father found these two boys that I went to school with lived directly across the street from me. And we began using their mother as my babysitter in the afternoons when we would get off the bus together.
Hmm.
I would just go to their house, and their mom would make peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and would babysit me until my father came home from work. And that was kind of the daily routine for years until one night we heard all kinds of sirens going on in the middle of the night. And we got up and we went outside and we see all these fire trucks, cops, ambulance, everything you can think of. And it was like the whole city was there. It was a really big deal. And while my father was talking to a policeman or a fireman or something, I slipped away from it. Now, remember, I'm 8 years old.
Hmm.
And I ran around to the back of the apartments and I went up the back staircase and I went right into my friend's apartment because the door was open. And suddenly I find myself standing in the middle of a crime scene. And my friend's mother, who was my babysitter, had been murdered, brutally murdered, and she had been cut in half. And her head was laying down on the floor off to my left, and to the rest of her body was over to the right. And so I was 8 years old when that event took place. And that, we believe, set off a series of events that eventually would send me spiraling into some really serious obsessive compulsive disorders.
Hmm.
And I think that it's really, really important for people to understand that when you are in the grips of obsessive compulsive disorder, you're not always in control of what you're doing. And I think that's the piece that people miss. But we believe that it started as a result of that. And it was my brain's way of dealing and compartmentalizing with something that was so traumatic. I mean, even today, I'm 54 years old. And even today, I can, 50 years later, I can still remember the smells inside of that apartment. And so that can really cause your brain to do some very strange things.
Right.
And immediately after that, I began displaying signs of rituals, counting, organization, and all kinds of things like that. And the rumination, the obsessive thinking, all of that kind of stuff. And so that's really where that came from.
Now, how does one start to understand it, but not just understand it, start to deal with it as you're going on, because you're at such an early age, and that trauma, and one of the things I deal with is trauma with men, right? And so as a man, how did you start to deal with that moving forward? I mean, I know it was a process. What were some of the steps that you took to
You
get?
know, the answer to the question you're asking happened decades later
Okay.
because I didn't understand it
Okay.
for most of my life. I wasn't diagnosed with it until I
Mhm.
was like 32, I think, or 33. I was in my early 30s when I was finally diagnosed,
Okay.
but I didn't know what was wrong with me because, as is common with most people who experience severe OCD to the degree that I had it
Hmm.
anyway, we go to great lengths to hide it from the outside world because we don't want anyone to know that we have this disorder. We're ashamed of it. We're embarrassed by it. We think that something is wrong with us. We think our brain is broken. Nothing could be further from the truth, by the way. You're not broken.
Yeah,
If
no,
you
you're
know,
not
if
broken.
you're watching this right now, I'm talking directly to you. If you have obsessive compulsive disorder or you're dealing with obsessive compulsive disorder and you think that your brain is broken, you need to reach out to me because I can help you. You are not broken. Your brain's not broken. You're not broken. It's just you need to learn the skill set
Mm.
that is going to help you cope with all of this obsession. And it's crazy, man, because it people, the number one question I get about obsessive compulsive disorder is, how do you know that it's a problem? Because everybody has OCD to some varying degree. For example, you might go through your day and you might be driving down the street and you might like to count stoplights. There are people that do that.
Yes.
There are people that might like to count the change in their pocket 5 times because they feel like that when they count the change in their pocket on the fifth time, then they're clear to go out the door. It sounds ridiculous to the reasonable, logical brain, but to the person that's suffering from obsessive compulsive disorder, you don't know what is going on with you. You don't know why it's happening. You don't understand these things. The only thing that you know is that you're compelled to do these things.
Right.
And so it feels like a curse. It feels like a burden. Those are two words that I hear a lot from my coaching clients, is that they feel like that they are burdened and they feel like that they're cursed in some way, or that they did something bad and
Hmm.
now they're being punished for it. And so in that scenario, you begin to convince yourself the lies we tell ourselves that we convince ourselves are true are just extraordinary. But um, they you begin to convince yourself that you're broken, and you begin to convince yourself that you're not worthy. And eventually that spiral will lead you to where it led me, which is to the brink of suicide. You just get to a point after years and years and years of this where you just can't live like this anymore. And I got there. Um, and I'll answer the question this way by saying, people ask me all the time, how do you know when it's serious? The
Right.
answer to the question is when it begins to rob you of your quality of life. When you can't do something that you would otherwise normally enjoy doing,
Hmm.
that's robbing you of your quality of life, and that's a sign that you need help.
Now, why did it take them so long to diagnose you? Um, 32, right? You said is when you found out. Why did it take so long? And what is the healthcare system doing to combat the situation to be better at diagnosing people with OCD?
Great question. Great question. First off, we don't have a healthcare system. We
Mm.
have a sick care system. We Our system is designed to keep you sick because that's where the profits are.
Yeah,
So we're not healing people. If we were, it would be a completely different system.
that's true.
And it would all start up here, because this is where, a lot of people don't realize this, but 90% or more of doctor visits are a direct result of stress and anxiety.
Yes.
We get sick because of our thoughts, because of our thinking. So when you learn to change the way you process information, you begin to heal. Well, there's no money in that.
No.
So we have a sick care system. We have a system that is designed to keep people buying pills to support and prop up an insurance company who's owned by billionaires.
Yeah.
And so there's no profit in healing people. So that's the first thing. The second question, why it took them so long to diagnose me, is because OCD mimics a bunch of different disorders.
Yes.
And so it's hard to pinpoint, is it a chemical imbalance? Is it a psychological problem? Is it a combination of the two? Is it a physical problem? Which is where they always start. They always start with the physical thing, and they do all the tests on you physically to rule out that there's nothing wrong with you physically. And then they just hand you a little piece of paper that's about that big. It's a little referral form, and they tell you to go see a psychiatrist or a psychologist, because the doctors don't want to deal with it,
Right.
because it's not their field. There's no money in it. So they want to get rid of you as quickly as they can. And that's the way it's been since I was a child. And so it really took a massive event in my life that brought me to my knees in order for me to get diagnosed. And I'll tell you what that was.
Yes.
Some of your viewers may recognize me from the Netflix hit TV series Tiger King 2, the Doc Antle story.
Yes.
And I told this story to Netflix when we were filming. Unfortunately, it didn't make it into the show because of time constraints, but I'll tell it to you here.
Yes, please.
I was in Branson, Missouri, in the early 2000s, and I was the opening act for the Osmond Brothers and for Tony Orlando. You may remember Tony Orlando and Dawn.
I am named after Tony Orlando.
Oh, are you?
my name is literally Tony Orlando Lynch.
There you go.
So thank you for that memory.
Isn't that crazy? Well, I was Tony's opening act in Branson, and he's a great guy. Love him to death. There's a whole chapter in my book written about Tony because he did something extraordinary during this event. But anyway, I was performing in Branson, Missouri. It was Christmas time. The Osmonds always ended their yearly tour at their own theater in Branson, Missouri, called the Osmond Theater. Tony would do the daytime show, and the Osmonds would do the nighttime show. And so I was doing both. And so one night after a show, we were sold out. I collapsed backstage for no reason, just suddenly hit the floor, blacked out, and woke up in the hospital. The Osmonds were surrounding me, and realized I was in deep trouble, and I didn't know what had happened. And then everybody began telling me these stories that I started to convulse, and I fell to the ground, and I was shaking like I was having a seizure, and I was crying and choking, and it was just a horrific scene. And it traumatized a lot of the people that were backstage that were, watching all of this.
I can imagine.
And so they put me in the hospital. They ran the battery of tests, and then the doctors come in and they shame you. And they come in and they go, "Well, Mr. Diamond, we didn't really find anything. You're perfectly fine. And the truth is, we need this bed for someone who truly needs it." And
Whoa.
That's the attitude that they give you, that the doctors give you, because doctors are trained to think that if you don't have a missing arm, you're not hurt.
Right.
But sometimes the hurt is not visible. Sometimes you can be just as injured up here as someone who's had their legs cut off.
Yes.
And so here again, it's that sick care system, that's just failing you. So there I was in the hospital, and the next thing I knew, I was compartmentalizing this whole traumatic experience. And what that means is I was creating a little box in my head, and I took all of the trauma, I put it in the box, locked it, and shoved it into a corner, never to be thought of again. And that lasted for all of 2 weeks. And the same thing happened. I passed out again. So this time, instead of going to the hospital, I went to a therapist, and I actually got a hold of a really good therapist who was able to very quickly tell me what was going on. And for the very first time in my life, I heard the words, "You have obsessive compulsive disorder."
Wow. Wow. It's just that journey, just going through the healthcare system and being a man, compartmentalizing those things. I can definitely understand that. I've suffered with PTSD from, past experiences in life. But as a man, no one teaches us how to deal with those things. No one, I mean, pretty much people look at us and go, you're a man, you got to man up, and keep moving forward, right? Not understanding the long-term effects that it would have on us as
It's
we
so
get
toxic.
so toxic. Yeah, I know. I had to go back and apologize to a few people because I realized that it wasn't all them, that maybe I was the toxic one. But understanding now, after being diagnosed, what were some of the steps that you took to kind of better understand it and control it, so to speak?
So the very first thing that happens to you when you're diagnosed with OCD is you
Mhm.
go through a series of tests, and they want to find out where you are on the scale. Are you do you have a religious version of OCD? Do you have a compulsory version of OCD? Do you have a ritualistic version of OCD? So they need to figure out what your coping mechanisms are in your disorder, and that takes a little bit of time. Really, that's a lot of therapy. And what I found ultimately going through that whole process, I've been in therapy pretty much for the last 30 years. And I've learned a lot in therapy. A lot of what I've learned is that most of therapy is crap. There are a few things that are really, really important that you need to know that can really, truly help you overcome any mental disorder. And I think that there are a lot of people out there that get hooked into the system, and they end up going through, like I did, going through all of the therapy. And I'm not saying that I love therapy, and I'm a big proponent of it if you can find the right therapist.
Yes.
I have my own podcast called What the Tigers Taught Me, and I have a whole episode on how to choose the right therapist for you. So if anybody out there is wanting to go down the therapy path and you just don't know how to find the right therapist, because the quality of your therapy is going to depend on the person that sits in front of you. So over the years, I've learned a very unique approach of how to find the right person to help you with that therapy. So therapy helped me a lot. I went through many different types of therapy. I went through psychotherapy. I went through EMDR therapy. I went through talk therapy. I went through. There's a lot of different modalities that I went through over the years.
Mhm.
So I kind of became an expert on what works and what doesn't work, at least for me.
Right.
And so today I teach people those skills. And I'll tell you the number one thing that you can do when you feel like that you need help with your OCD is to realize that your brain can, will, and often does lie to you.
Yes.
And so when you and the second part of that is that you are not your thoughts.
Mm.
You're not your thoughts. Just because you have a thought, that is not you. That is your brain, who can and often does act independently from you. Now we're getting into a very philosophical conversation, which I'll say for another time. But you are not the thinker. You're not the thought that comes into your mind. When you learn to separate yourself from what you think, you put yourself back in the driver's seat, and you're able to regain some control in your life. That was life changing to me. Just learning how to do that one skill, just learning how to separate myself from my thoughts and realize that everything that goes through my head is not true. And everything that goes through my head, I don't have to identify as me. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense. That makes perfect sense. Yeah. I have a philosophy when I talk to men to go, hey, just be careful of your thoughts. Your thoughts can take you in a place where it can be very dark, where you know you don't belong there, but you don't know how to get yourself out of it.
For sure.
Yeah.
I have a whole course about that. Lifeskillsmasterclass.com. I
Hmm.
have an entire 15-week course where I teach people those very skills. Because, when you're born, no one hands you a user manual like when you buy a
Exactly.
car.
Yeah.
When we buy a car, everybody goes in the glove compartment and pulls out the user manual. We don't get that when we're born. So and by the way, I hope you're born to good parents.
Yes, I think
Um,
that has a lot to do with it as
has a
well.
lot to do with it. A lot of people don't realize that our entire personalities are developed between 0 and 8. So if you want to know the secrets and the reasons of why you are the way that you are
Hmm.
today, go back in your mind and think about who were the most influential people around you for the first 8 years of your life.
Yes.
What was the environment you were living in? Did you feel love and nurtured, or did you feel scarcity, lack, and not safe?
Mm.
All of those things shape who we eventually become, and we don't realize, and no one ever tells young parents, that in those first 8 years of that being's life, you are molding and shaping the foundation of who that young person is going to be later in their lives.
Mm. Yes. I
A
guess
lot of things can be answered by
this is true.
analyzing those first 8 years.
I guess one of my biggest questions is it inherited? Is it passed down through parents, or is it generational? Because I know I have what you call a sensory processing input disorder.
Yep.
My brain will take something, break it down, put it back together, but then take it apart just to understand every moving part to it.
Mhm.
And I do that within a matter of seconds. So if I'm not careful, my mind will go this way and that way and this way. Far as I understand, my son, we are the only reported case of it being heard in, passed down from father to son. Most of us are just born, and just like OCD, we don't find out till later on in life, right? Because I didn't find out till my son was diagnosed, and that was when I was 30. Same thing, 30.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's true. Can it be passed down? Yes. The answer is yes, it can be passed down. We don't know the specifics of that.
Okay.
Scientists have not been able to figure out why, who, and how, because it doesn't get passed down to everybody. It did get passed down to me. My mother suffered from a severe chemical imbalance in the brain, as
Mm.
do I. So that was completely inherited. And, I was born predispositioned to certain things. It's kind of like alcoholism in a way.
Right.
If you have extreme alcoholism in your family, if you've got a long line of alcoholism in your family on
Hmm.
either side, you are born predispositioned to be an alcoholic. And the same thing with drug use. A lot of my clients are former drug addicts.
Mm.
And why do we turn to drugs and alcohol? We turn to drugs and alcohol because we're looking for a way to stop the emotional pain that is happening within us. But when you're a man, you're taught to repress that.
Right. Right.
And you're taught that it's weak if you go there. If you cry, if you show any emotion, you're weak. And we have to change that narrative. And I will tell you that I find one of the biggest things that screws people up early in their life
Hmm.
is toxic masculinity.
Yes. We talked
When
about that before, a little bit before.
Yes, when you are taught that your feelings need to be repressed, what is the message that you're getting in your brain? The message that you receive is, I'm not worthy. Because if I can't deal with my authentic self, and if I have to hide a part of me, if I have to lock away a part of me to keep from processing that information, then I am not worthy, or you feel I'm broken.
Mm.
And so these are the messages that young men get very, very early in their lives. So is it any wonder that they grow up and have relationship issues? Is it any wonder that they grow up and have financial issues,
Mm.
drug and alcohol issues, can't hold down a job? All of these things are generally the result of a person's ability to process information, and that is determined by the skill sets that they have, that they've been taught. And then the other component of that is the environment that you grew up in those first 8 years. So
Yes.
some people come into this world and they're screwed from day one. They're doomed from
Yes.
day one. No chance of getting out of their neighborhood, no chance of them ever succeeding because of who they're surrounded by in their tribe,
Yes.
you know.
I love that.
And so when that child comes into the world, he's born into a family that is probably young parents who
Mhm.
have no skills, who are only trying to figure out, they're just now trying to figure out how to survive in
Yes.
the world. Now they've got a mouth to feed and they've got to care for, and they don't have any skills for that. They
Yeah.
don't know what they're doing. So you can see that over time, how the deck is stacked against us.
Mhm. Yeah.
And you really have to fight your way out. Now, let me tell you the difference between me and a lot of other people. And it took me decades of therapy to figure this out. And it was focus. I had something in my life from a very early age that gave me focus that I think most people don't have. And
Yes.
that was that I grew up as a magician.
Yes.
So I started performing magic when I was 8 or 9 years old. And I didn't understand it at the time. My father took me to a magic shop and we bought this magic trick, and we went home. My dad helped me learn how to do it. And I was so good at it that I was take it to school, and I suddenly became, like the most popular guy around. And I figured out, oh my gosh, by doing these magic tricks, people like me. So the human mind does what works. If it works, you do more of that. If it doesn't, you look for something else. So because that mechanism was working for me, I went back to my dad and said, I want more magic. Can we go back to the magic shop? So we did. And before you knew it, I was a full-fledged magician. I was really good at it. I
Mm.
could make people laugh. And I had just natural talent for that particular skill set. And I became obsessed with it because of my OCD,
Mhm.
because the magic gave me an outlet, gave me a creative outlet, gave me something to focus on. That did a number of things that I didn't realize. One is it taught me laser focus. It taught me how to read the instructions, learn how to do the magic trick, and then go out and perform it for other people successfully. And that's a very important skill
Right.
to learn. And then the second thing it did is it kept me off the streets, because I didn't come from a wealthy family. I came from a lower middle class family. My father was a truck mechanic, and my mom was a religious fanatic. And so there was no wealth in my family. I didn't come from a wealthy family. We lived on the wrong side of the tracks where I lived. And so it was kind of a scrappy area.
Yeah.
And and you kind of had to learn to survive and fight your way through all of this. And one of the things that magic did for me was it gave me that singular focus that I could flow my OCD energies into.
Mhm.
And it's a double-edged sword. Because of my obsession with it, I became an expert, became eventually would become a master magician because of it. But there's a price to pay for all that, because it robs you of everything else in your life, because you're just laser focused to that one thing. Now, it took decades of therapy for me to figure out with my therapist that eventually is what saved my life. Had I not had that, I probably wouldn't be sitting here today.
Now, the one thing I did read, and if you don't mind, I would like to touch on it.
Sure.
Throughout the time when you were becoming a magician, you had a mentor
Mhm.
as well, and you was homeless.
I
And
was.
and pickpocketing, correct?
It sure was.
See, I read all of that. I was like, oh my God, man. So
I'm not
but
proud of
look,
that, Tony. I'm not proud.
I know you're not. I know you.
Let's
Look,
say right up
but
front,
we all
I'm
have a
not.
past, though. We all do things that we're not proud of, but we have to survive as well. See, it's that part of the thing that you just talked about. We go into a mindset of, well, we have to survive this and get through this, right? And no one said it was going to be easy. And it's sad that these things do happen to us. But look at the man that you are now. You're this amazing beacon of light for other people that are going through the same things. So I think the give and take in it, yeah, it was horrible, but look at the servitude that we can give to others, the value that we add to their lives, and first off, I want to say, man, don't feel bad about none of that, right? There's people out there that have been through a lot worse, probably one of them, right? I've been there, done that. I was that guy, just like you, homeless on the street, eating out of trash cans. And, it was the fight finding myself again, coming out through there. And
Yeah, you don't know
right,
how resilient of a human being you are until you're put in those situations.
exactly. Yeah.
And you find yourself, my own family members have asked me questions over the years about why would you do that? Why would the short version of the story is when I was 18 years old, I moved to Las Vegas with my best magician friend.
Hmm.
And a couple weeks being here, we only had enough money to survive a few months anyway. And our idea was we were going to come to Las Vegas. We were going to go to all these casinos and pitch our magic show. And eventually, they were going to love us and our names were going to be in lights, in 30 days.
Yes.
How stupid were we?
Hey, being a child is not being stupid. You got to have curiosity and a dream, right?
Yeah, but we did it. We got in a car that barely drove, packed it with everything we own, and we drove all the way across from Virginia to Las Vegas. And when we got here, we found a city that was very different from what we saw on television and what we knew. We came to a city at that time, Las Vegas was run by the mob. So it was a very different town than it is today. And it could be a little scary at times. And we got ourselves into some trouble very quickly because we didn't know how to navigate those kind of things here in Las Vegas. Right. Because Vegas is a unique town. It's different from any other place in the world. It doesn't operate the same as any other place. The rules are different here. Everything is completely different. But what ended up happening was a couple weeks in, or 3 weeks or so into being here, Joey, my magician friend that I moved with, met this girl at a window tinting place. He was applying for a job, and he met this girl, and a couple days later, they were moved in together. And suddenly I'm left with no money, no rent, no way to pay the bills, nothing. And I come home one day from a job interview and the door is locked. Mm-hmm. And all my stuff, which was nothing but some clothes and a few magic tricks, was locked inside. So here I am locked out of my apartment. I have nothing, no ID, no wallet, no nothing. And I'm in a suit. Ooh. So now I'm homeless in Las Vegas in a suit. So I start wandering around the strip for days. I'm wandering around the strip trying to figure out what to do. I was starving. And I was able to beg for enough change to get, there used to be a casino on the strip right next to Circus, which had 50-cent hot dogs and 50-cent bags of popcorn. And I would get a couple dollars every day together, and I would go in there and I would eat me a couple hot dogs and a couple bags of popcorn, and that's how I survived. Wow. And eventually I got tired of that. And I was like, I've got to get myself out of here. And the only way I'm going to do it is to, find some money. And I couldn't get a job because I had no ID. So at that time, the Mirage was just opening. It's 1990. Yeah. The Mirage was just opening. Siegfried and Roy were building one of the biggest shows in the world. And before the show opened, to promote the show, they opened a lion habitat in the lobby of the Mirage. And thousands of people would crowd into this little narrow hallway to see the tigers and lions in this giant window. And that became a perfect scenario for just going through and using my magic skills to distract people while I literally stole their wallets. Horrible. It's absolutely horrible.
Like I said, we've been there, brother. You know, when you're down and out and you're hungry, things like that, and especially when you're young, have nobody to depend on. We have to do things that are not the best. And I feel sorry for the people that we've done it to, right?
I think about them even to this day.
Yes, me
One
too.
man in particular, there was this little black man that I'll never forget. And he was an older guy and he had a camera and it was a brand new camera. And the camera is what I really wanted because I knew that was worth hundreds of dollars. I knew I could pawn that. And I was like, I got to get that camera. Couldn't get the camera, but he set his wife was next to him. She was taking pictures and she handed her pocketbook to him and he set it down. And I got a hold of that thing. And do you know, to this day, I think about that couple. I think about that man. I think about that lady. And I think about how I ruined their vacation. And I think about all of the other trouble that I could have caused these people. It's horrifying to me. It's one of the parts of myself that, or my former self, I should say,
Yes.
that I don't think I've yet made amends with that.
And that's a hard journey. And talking from someone who has had to go back and make amends, ask for forgiveness for the things I've done. You know, mine is similar. I didn't go to Vegas, but I've been to Vegas a few times, Nevada, and I've done my fair share of wrong. Yeah, in robbing people when I was homeless. I was homeless for a majority of my life, so I definitely understand what you're saying. I've been homeless over 16 times in my life, where I've had everything stripped away from me and had to build myself back up. The worst one I ever did was a two-year stint under the street. And I remember this one, just like yourself. I think.
What city were you in?
I was in Colorado at the time. I was in Denver. I was in downtown Denver, and this was the late 1990s because I had just got out of prison. And so I got out of prison, no family, because most of my family is in Virginia, the ones that were left at that time. And
that's where I'm from.
What part?
I'm from Portsmouth, Virginia Beach, Norfolk area.
Newport News.
Right across the bridge.
Right across the bridge. And so, yeah, you know how Virginia was back in the day. It was kind of rough, like you said, to the other side of the tracks. We had to come up scrapping, right? So we learned how to survive. We learned a way of feral living because our parents didn't really know what we was doing half the time, right? And the other half, they didn't want to know.
Yep.
So we was left to our own device. So when I was homeless, man, I told myself, I'm going to survive this by any means necessary. And I started
But you have to. You have no choice.
Yeah.
You get to a point to where you realize I'm in survival mode right now. Nothing else matters.
Nothing else mattered. And, I told myself, as long as I can punch somebody out, I can go in their pockets and take. And one time I ruined a couple's night bad. They had just left out the club and they were feeling good, about ready to go home. And here I am, this little skinny black guy, walk up and put a gun in your face. And you're looking at me going, you're not going to do it. So I looked at his wife and I said, well, since you're not afraid, I know that she will, and you're going to have to comply. Right. To this day, I think about that like, oh my God, why? I mean, but I get it. I don't have any regrets. I was able to go back, and don't ask me how I did it, but I was able to find some of these people and I made amends to them. They didn't even know who I was. So I could have easily kept it to myself, but it was the thing that was inside of me that wouldn't allow it. I was like, hey, in order for me to be better, I have to go back and I have to tell these people what I've done. And yeah,
I've done the same thing to a large degree. Now, these people that I robbed when I was pickpocketing, I have no idea who they were. And I have no idea, how to find them. So that would be an impossibility.
Yeah.
But all of the people I've hurt in my life that I'm aware of that I've hurt in my life, I've gone back and made amends with them because that's a part of the therapeutic process. Right. And I don't think you can move on with your life in an authentic way unless you do that.
Right. Yeah. And I don't know how I ran across these people. I really don't. I just never left the area. And so knowing that, it's run across people all the time. And I'm good at remembering faces. And so I didn't need to know the name. I just need to remember their face and just kind of fill them out and I have to go up to them and say, hey, how you doing? I'm Tony, remember a couple of weeks back where you got robbed and everything? Like, yeah, that was me. This is yours. I do apologize. If you want to call the police, I'm good with that too. But I did something wrong. I did you wrong. And here you go. And I would just leave it like that. The times when I was in the gangs, the things that I got into, that was the hardest one, going back and asking forgiveness for the things I've done to a few people, but now I look back on it and yes, no, I didn't get everyone, but I do keep them in my thoughts and keep them in my prayers. And if I ever see them again after all this time, I would hope that they would give me the opportunity. I would hope that they would give me the opportunity to.
It's interesting
Yeah.
because people are more forgiving than you think.
Yes. Yes.
We a lot of times build up, and I see this a lot with my coaching clients, is that they build up these narratives in their head and they convince themselves that they have to feel a certain way.
Right. Yes.
And they go to these people, and what they often find is great compassion with someone that they're afraid of, someone they're afraid to go and beg forgiveness, because they think that that person is going to call the police or that person might be angry at them or whatever. What I have found in my life to be true is that by and large, the vast, vast majority, those people were incredibly compassionate.
Yes.
And they were incredibly understanding, and they really cared that you thought about them enough. And it kind of rings in their head, and they begin to realize this is a good human being, because only good human beings have the capacity to do these things.
Right.
And so that's where the attrition comes from. That's why people say, you know what, I get it. I wish it hadn't happened. It was really effed up, but
right.
Hey, you're a different person today.
Yes.
Tony, I had 7 years ago last week, I had a life-changing accident. I had a different career for about 12 years. I was producing shows, residencies, things like that. I was working on the production crews of these large, giant shows. And I was on the road with Katy Perry doing some corporate events. We were in Chicago, and I ended up running out of the venue right before the last number to try and beat the traffic. And I ended up in a horrible accident. And I died 3 times. And I died on the scene. Took them 45 minutes to revive me. And then I died on the operating table in the trauma ward. And they had to stop the operation to save my life. And then they put me in a medically induced coma. And when they woke me up from the coma, I went into respiratory failure. And when I went into the respiratory failure, I had a complete near-death experience. That's what they call it, near-death experience. I had the full death experience. Crossed over to the other side. I'm writing a book about it now. I've been writing a book for the last 2 years about this.
Okay.
And it's taken me a long time to understand what happened to me. It's taken me a long time to learn the lessons that I needed to learn from these events. But one of the reasons why that accident happened in my life was because I had a karmic debt to pay. Because of all the bad things I had done prior to that, there was this atonement that needed to happen in order for me to begin the journey to become the man that I am today. Because you can't do what I do today, which is heal people and help them with their trauma. I'm a trauma release expert. I help really good people. I remind really good people who they truly are. And I help move them past and through their trauma, whatever that may be.
Right. Yes.
And one of the only ways you can do that is by going through the process that you yourself have gone through, that I've gone through, and that we're describing here, which is beginning at a really dark, difficult place, which is you need to atone in the best way possible. It may be impossible. Some people are going to be dead. Some people aren't going to be interested in speaking to you in any capacity,
Right.
whatever the case may be. But you need to atone for the things that you did in order for you to get to a place where you can begin to live your life in an authentic way.
Right.
And only then can you truly begin to make a difference in the world. I tell people all the time, I'm not the guy that's going to change the world, but I might be the guy that can make a difference in people's lives one
Yes.
heart at a time.
Yes. Now, you developed a program. Yeah, you mentioned it a little bit. Let's talk about that program. I do have it written down.
Mhm.
Um,
Life Skills
Life
Masterclass.
Skills Masterclass. There you go. Let's talk about that because that is really interesting to be focusing on something so deep as OCD and helping people get through their traumas, and finding their authentic selves, as you said. So let's talk a little bit about that.
So the course happened quite by accident. It's a funny story. In 2004, I wrote a book, which I actually have a copy of right here. I wrote this book called OCD, A Life Among Secrets.
Okay.
And it tells the story of everything we've been talking about here today. For your readers, something really interesting. You don't often get this, but I decided to put it in there. But I have pictures in the book of me with all my lions and tigers back in the day. So you can see there's me with all of my big lions and tigers. That's me when I was 11 years old. That was my first publicity photo right there. And then there's me swimming in my swimming pool with one of the tigers. So when I wrote this book, when you write a book, you really honestly don't think anybody will ever read it. And lo and behold, Jane Pauley, who at the time was the most respected journalist on television, and she had her own daytime talk show back then, and it was called The Jane Pauley Show. And Jane was getting ready to come out publicly and announce that she suffered from bipolar disease and has her whole life. And that she was preparing this big series of episodes. And in her research for potential guests on the show, she got a hold of my book and she read it. And one night she calls me and she says, I would really like to do an episode on obsessive compulsive disorder.
Mm-hmm.
Because after reading your book, I realized how close it is to bipolar disorder.
Yes.
And she said, I think that there's a lot of synergy there. So she had me on the show as the main guest, and the secondary guest, believe it or not, was Howie Mandel.
Wow.
And so we went on the show, and it all happened very quickly. And I was totally unprepared for what was going to happen next. And as soon as the show aired, I began getting tens of thousands of emails from people all over the world who were watching the show and saying, oh my God, that's me. I relate to this guy's story.
Right.
Even though my story is over the top, and I get it, I'm larger than life. My life has always been over the top. I get that. But even with all of that circus fanfare, people were able to see the common thread
Right.
in me and relate that to themselves. So they began reaching out to me. And I didn't have anything to give them. I wasn't an expert. I didn't know. I'm just on a TV talk show telling my story because I wrote a book.
Mm-hmm.
And the next thing I know, my book is flying off the shelves. And people are literally hunting me down, looking for advice. So I created this, which was my first product, which was a 4 CD audio CD. This tells you how long ago it was. A 4 CD audio course um, on how to deal with stress and anxiety. And the only reason I created this was because I wanted to point these people who are reaching out to me, I wanted to give them some of the answers. Because as they were sending me these emails, I was keeping a spreadsheet of really clever, important questions that these people were asking me.
Right. Yeah.
So then I took all those questions and created this. And we sold thousands of copies. And that became the very first version of my course. And then I realized there were so many people out there that were suffering and didn't know where to turn and had no one to trust. And for some reason, people trusted me because I was willing to share my story in such an authentic and honest way.
Yeah.
And talk about the dirty stuff just as much as the glamorous stuff.
Right.
And that really resonated with people. So that became my first version of the course. And over the last 15 years, it has just evolved and it's grown and grown and grown. And now it's the single most comprehensive course on the internet. There's no BS, there's no fluff in this course. It's only the things that you really need to know based on what I have learned in my experience that works and doesn't work. So I'm saving you time and money. You don't have to go to therapy. For the vast majority of people, this course is going to give them the answers that they're looking for.
Nice. Now, I have two questions. When it comes down to OCD, for one, is there a cure for it? And
there is no cure.
There's no cure for it. So my second question would be, where would a person suffering from OCD find that help?
So there are two places that I would go. First, let's go back to your original question in terms of, is there a cure? No, there's no cure, but you can learn a certain set of skills that I teach that will help you cope with your obsessive compulsive disorder. And for the vast majority of people, that's going to be enough. Now, the more extreme cases, like in my case, they're going to need professional help. Because when you get into the dark downward suicidal spiral, as I call it, you're not going to fix that yourself. You need professional help. And it was only through professional help that I was able to pull myself out of that. But in that process, I learned what really matters. And I put all of that and all of those answers into a CD that you can get on my website, on audio. It's a MP3 download. There's a video that goes with it. Okay. You can go to stevendiamon.com, and in the store, there is a MP3 download called OCD, the Missing Manual of Answers. That little mini course, it'll take you about an hour to go through it, but it's going to answer all of the major questions that you have. And it's also going to provide you a lot of resources that you can use to get help. And so that's one place. Another place is my course at lifeskillsmasterclass.com. We also there teach you those same set of skills. And I think that that's a good place to start. Of course, I think that's a good place to start.
Yeah, that's an excellent place to start.
But it will get you pointed in the right direction, and all the information that you need is there. And I have a free gift for all of your viewers, Tony. I have something I'd like to offer to them. You know, people who are dealing with obsessive compulsive disorder, who are dealing with grief, who are dealing with stress and anxiety, who are dealing with difficult situations in their life, they all have one important thing in common, which is they can't sleep. They have trouble sleeping at night because you can't turn this off.
Right.
And so I created, you might not know this, but I'm a certified hypnotherapist. And
a little bit about that.
I have created a CD. Well, this was the physical product we used to sell in stores back in the day. But here's an audio CD called Deep Relaxation. It's a self-hypnotic CD. And this, you don't even have to listen to it. All you need to do is put this on it at night and go to bed. And the audio will do the work for you. And it's the best sleep you'll ever get in your life. I'm going to give all of your viewers that CD for free. This is a $20 value. I'm going to give it to them all for free. All they have to do is go to stevendiamond.com, scroll down to the bottom, and you'll see it, where just put in your name and email address, and you'll be taken to a page where you can download that, and you'll have the best sleep of your life. Guaranteed.
That is truly amazing. So now, how can people find you on your social media?
You can find me at stevendiamond.com. My social media is all there. You can find me on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. I have a really engaged Facebook group. Most of your viewers would probably be really interested in that. It's called Life Skills Masterclass Coaching Group.
Okay.
You can find it in Facebook groups. And we have a very active, very engaged community inside of that Facebook group. And every Thursday night, I do a half-hour live streaming class where I teach skill sets on a particular topic, a different topic each week.
Okay.
So go to Life Skills Masterclass Coaching Group in Facebook, find us. You'll have to answer 3 questions in order to be admitted in. And if you don't answer those questions, we won't let you in. And there's a good reason for it, because we only want people inside the group who are there to truly work on and improve themselves. If you're just there to look around, you're probably not a good fit for us.
Right.
Because this is a group of people who are like-minded, who all want to support and uplift each other, who want to love each other, who want to be there when that one person, every once in a while, we get that one person in the group whose life just completely collapses. And we surround them. We surround that person with love, with connections, with resources. We really, really go to that person's aid and surround them and try and be that support system for them. Because not everyone has a support system. Not everyone has a family. Most of my family is dead. I just have my one sister and her family that's left. Everybody else in my family's gone. So there are lots of people out there that just don't have that place to turn to. And this group has really become an exemplary example of a place where you can go if you don't have a support system and find that love and that connection that you need. You can't do this alone. You can't get through this life alone.
No, you can't. Then that's my motto. I tell all the guys I talk to, look, I know we've been taught to do it alone, but there's just some things that you just can't do alone. You need someone to walk with you. You need someone to sit with you to understand and help validate what you're going through, because you're not crazy. Everything that you're going through is totally normal. You know, you just need to be around other people that is normal too. Yeah, and then the rest of them just need to be educated on it. I think that's where it starts. We talked about the Colorado thing. There's a lot of work that needs to be done, a lot of education that needs to be handed out to people so they can better support family members and friends, and better yet, get the support that they need themselves. Right?
It's true. It's true. And, you know, I'll tell you about another I don't know. Should I even talk?
No, go ahead, please. We already on the roll now. You know, we already on the roll. Come on, baby.
I don't know if I should talk about this yet or not, but or who cares? So I am working on a project with a prison here in Nevada. We're also talking to a prison in California. And we're working out the specifics with the prison right now because it's really complicated to get into a prison in any capacity, as you can well imagine. So I'm getting ready to do an entire training program inside one of the worst prisons in the country. And I think you and your story would be a great inspiration. And I think a lot of these guys would really resonate with you if we can get you in, because there's so many layers to what you can and can't do in terms of bringing people with you. If we can get you in, I would love to bring you with me. I would love
to. Look, I am honored that you even asked me, and humble enough to say yes. Yes, of course, wherever I can help or wherever I can contribute, please let me know. I mean, That's what we're here for. I'm here as a servant, you know,
Yeah.
to the people. So wherever my skills, where you can see my skills being a benefit to someone, I'm there. All you have to do is just let me know, man.
Yeah,
I,
we'll stay in touch because I think you have an important story and I think it needs to be told. And I think that there's a lot of these guys that would relate to you on many, many levels. And I'm going to go in and teach my course as a pilot program to a small group of inmates
mhm.
and who are all currently being vetted. And they're selecting the right ones that they want. They're going to put them in this group, and I'm going to go in as a pilot program and teach them these skills and see what kind of a difference it makes in these prisoners' lives. And if it's significant, if we can get which I'm confident I can
Yeah.
get a really significant outcome, then they may roll this program out in a variety of other prisons. I have I have coached. This all happened because I have somehow fallen into coaching a group of people who have just been released from prison.
Mm. Okay.
So I had one client who had been in prison for 15 years, got released, and was just blown away because of technology. The world is different. Everything is completely different from when he went in
Mhm.
and didn't know how to cope, didn't know how to do anything. He was looking for a way. He found my program. He found Life Skills Masterclass. He signed up and started taking my program. And about 3 weeks into the program, he sent me an email, a really touching email. And so I called him and we started talking. And the next thing I knew, he became a coaching client. Now, this guy is leading me back to the prisons. And he was like, Steven, there's a huge gap that needs to be filled in these people who have been locked up for years and then they just get thrown on the streets with $50 and a bus
Mhm.
ticket.
Yep.
And they have no family, no one that cares about them, no one will answer their calls, no one wants to talk to them, no one wants anything to do with them, and they don't know how to survive. And they just end up back on the streets and they end up repeating the cycle that got them locked up in the first place.
Exactly. Yeah.
And when I started getting involved in this and meeting these people, and I've met quite a few of them now, I have several of them that are coaching clients. I started realizing there was a need for a gap program, for a program that would fill the needs of these specific people.
Mhm.
So I am completely immersed right now in developing just such a program. Nothing exists. There's no one out there. There's no particular program. And my goal is if we get the right program put together, I want to eventually be able to roll this out on a nationwide basis that would truly help these people reintegrate themselves back into society in the right way by providing them all the skill sets and all the knowledge and all of the understanding that they don't currently have that they deserve. And that's it's kind of a secret project. I guess it's not secret anymore.
Well, they won't see this. They won't see this episode till next year, so it's still a secret for right now.
So,
But once it comes out, yeah,
but I think it's a really worthwhile cause, and it's something that
yes,
I'm very passionate about. It's something that I'm working on really really hard because these people are suffering,
yes,
and they're all good people. Just because you made a bad mistake, I don't care how bad your mistake was, you deserve a second chance.
you do, and
And
trust
and
me,
and um, I don't care how society rejects you. You deserve respect when you've paid your debt to society.
yes,
And I
yes,
believe this passionately because I have experienced this myself. When I was younger, living on the streets, and I got off the streets, I suddenly realized that people were treating me in a completely different way than they had the month before.
yes.
And that has never lost on me. And I'll tell you another quick story. When I shaved my head, I was losing my hair. I started losing my hair when I was like 21. By the time I was 26, yeah, we go to the same barber, don't we?
Yes, we do. He's really good at what he does.
um, and when I was by the time I was 26, I was completely bald, or I was thinning. I had the whole Phil Collins thing going on. So one day I was in Canada and I was on a TV show, and they brought a crane right over my head. And I was doing magic at that time. I wasn't doing this. I was doing magic tricks, and I was promoting a local appearance that I was getting ready to make the next day.
Mm.
And so I was on this morning talk show, and they had this big television crane that came over the top of my head, and it had a light on it. That night, I was back at the hotel watching the show air, and I saw this giant bald spot on the top. And I was like, oh my God, this is great. I can't take this anymore. This is horrible. So I jumped up from my bed, went running into the hotel bathroom, and I grabbed the clippers. And before I could even think about it, I just went, yeah. And I shaved my head for the first time. Tony, the next day, I got up that morning, and I went into a Target across the street, or was it a Walmart? It might have been a Walmart, I think, across the street from the hotel that I was in. And I walked in, and instantly security was following me. Now, that had never happened to me before in my life. And it was the very first time I ever got profiled. Because of the way I was dressed, I was younger back then, and I used to wear the skinny jeans and the boots and a jacket, and I looked like a skinhead.
Mm.
And I didn't mean to, but when you shave my head and you dress me the way I was dressing back then, I kind of looked like a skinhead. I didn't realize it. So as soon as I walked into a department store, store security was like following me around. And every time I turned around, I would see these same three people. It's two guys and a woman. And eventually I figured out, oh my God, this is store security. And they're following me because they think I'm going to steal something. This was the first time that I ever experienced in my life the discrepancy in how you're treated based on the color of your skin, how you look, how you dress, how you present yourself, how you show up in the world. So think about these guys who've been in prison 10, 12, 15, 20 years. And they get locked up. And the day they get locked up, time stops for them.
Yes.
And the day they get out, the clock restarts. But you're now in the future.
Mm.
And you don't know how to do anything. You don't know how to use an ATM machine. You don't know what a debit card is. You've never had one.
Yeah.
All of these things are real issues that these guys have to deal with, and they don't have the emotional and mental capacity to deal with them because they've had no evolution as a human being for the amount of time that they were locked and warehoused,
Right. Yes.
like rats in a cage. Does that make sense to you?
That makes perfect sense. And like I said, I've been that guy in prison before. You know, I went in 1994, got out in 1999. So I did 5 years flat, which is, you know, and some people that are doing larger sentences, that's a short time, but it's enough time to where when I go in one time, right, everything was, like you said, I remember things, right? And then I get out and it's like, no, this is not what I remember anymore. You know, the people that I knew, most of them had died. They were killed. Mm-hmm. Only maybe about a small fraction were able to move away. Very few went to prison. And so when I got out, the whole environment had changed. They had took the hood that I was used to running around in, and now there's different people here. The neighborhood looks nice. I'm not used to this. I'm used to, you know, so yes, it was totally different. And my mind was trapped here. And so in a way, it was confusing because I didn't know how to survive anymore. You know, the environment.
And what do you do? Where do you turn? It's not like there's this one particular place that you can go where all the answers are.
Right. So I had to figure it out on the fly, right? You know, as you move through, it's like,
what choice do you have?
Well, you have choices. We just make different choices, and it all depends on the individual as well. So, and that was one thing that I learned. You know, I could have made better choices, but I don't regret the choices that I've made.
No,
I don't regret any choice I've ever made. You know, it
no,
has got me
it
where I
brought you
am.
here,
I'm,
even the bad stuff.
yes, yes, and I'm able to talk about it now. That's the beautiful part about it, is that I'm able to take, just like you are, take my experiences in that story and my story and give it to someone and let them extract what they need from it. Even if they don't need the whole thing, you know, extract what you need from it, because that's what it's there for. I want my story to be your survival guide. If you can benefit from it, please, by all means. And I give it away. I give it away because I feel that's what we're supposed to do, right? We're supposed to take these things that we experience and give it away to other people so they can make choices to be better for themselves as well, but better for the people that are around them and the people that they call family, right?
Uh,
Because yeah,
you're speaking the truth, because that is exactly what you need. You
yeah,
know, my staff gets on me all the time about not posting more on social media. And I don't care a whole lot about social media, to be very honest with you. It's a necessary evil in the business that I
yes,
do,
yes, yeah,
but I don't really care that much for it. And so I've come up with my own way. And it kind of relates to what you're talking about. And it's that everybody is fighting the algorithm. And to me,
mhm,
that's a race to the bottom. Why am I going to fight some computer?
right,
I, why am I going to fight some computer code that that's just, it's ignorance. I'm not going to do it. And my managers and people are always telling me, you know, you got to post every day, you got to post more. And I'm like, no, 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 no. I'm going to post the content that resonates with my authenticity, that
hmm,
I know is going to help someone. I'd rather post something that is meaningful
yes,
and has value, and then let that attract to the people who need to hear it.
yes, yes,
And that's a life lesson as well. When you learn to step into your own authenticity
mm,
and you begin to live an authentic life as a human being, the need to impress and the need to be liked and the need to, that falls away.
it does,
And what happens is you begin to attract people who are resonating with that message, with
yes,
your authentic self, with what you, the vibration that you are now exuding.
oof,
They want to be a part of that.
yes,
And I find that it is such a much better way. I always tell my people, I don't care how many followers I have, how many people are getting something from the message that
hmm,
I'm giving.
yeah,
That's what I care about.
yes,
That's how you
yes.
make a difference.
Yeah, I do love that because I can relate to that on so many levels, and which is the reason why I love doing the podcast. Well, actually, I told you, I think I messaged you. I have another podcast which is a live stream and it's a panel discussion. And so we talk about everything: grief, trauma, mindfulness, you name it, you know. And so it's a great way to reach those individuals that normally wouldn't be able to meet these grief workers from across the world, right? But also ask questions and get the support, but also connect and learn how to communicate with one another. And I think that's what is where it all boils down to: being able to reach, like you said, I don't care how many followers I have. I'm only looking to reach one person. If I could change one person's life,
It's worth it.
it's worth it, right?
It's
And
worth it, man. It's worth
it's
it.
definitely
It's
worth it,
what
man.
makes me go to sleep at night peacefully.
Gets me up in the morning as well. Gets me up in the morning.
You know,
And
knowing that you're doing something that's making a tiny little difference.
right.
But it's kind of like a dog's mentality in a way. You know, to you, your dog is like a family member, you know, one of your family members, I should say.
Mhm.
But to the dog, you are their entire world.
There you go. There you go.
And so you never know when you're going to meet that person that needs to hear the message that only you can give them.
There you go. I love that.
And that can change their world. That one
Yes.
person's life can completely change because they simply crossed your path. To me, that is what my life is all about.
Yeah. And like I said, I can definitely relate to that. That vibration that we give off, I've understood for like the last 3 years since I've been doing men's grief work, is that the vibration I pull off, I attract. I attract the ones who need me the most. I never really understood it, but I am I am thankful and grateful that I am able to see it now and be able to manifest it more into this world. Like you said, becoming more of my authentic self. And the one thing I always remind myself, as much as I can take in, I can give back out. And
Absolutely.
is what I have in me is not mine to keep. So I'm definitely going to give that back out, because at the end of my life, I want to leave this place empty. I don't want nothing else left in me. I want to give everything that's inside of me out. That way, when I do rest from this world, whomever, if it's God or whomever it is, I want to stand in front of them. And I want to say, did I not serve you? Did I not give everything that you've given me out to the best of my ability? And now if I get there, he says, well, you got a little bit left. We're going to have to come back. We're going to have to come back because I'm not carrying this no more. We're going to have to leave all of this out of here, And
Absolutely.
but it's having faith in those steps, right? Because I never knew I was going to end up here. Never knew I was going to be doing any of this. Like yourself, that went down that spiral, almost committed suicide, homelessness, violence, gang violence, all of these different things. And so now here I am, 48 years old. Like you said, no family. I got one sister. She still lives in Virginia. But I've lost my son. I've lost my parents. I've lost grandparents, multiple friends. But I can say I was so blessed to have them with me.
Yeah, everything
So
in life is
blessed.
temporary.
Yeah, everything in life is temporary. It's the energy that they leave behind, though, that I don't think people really understand. But I'm like, hold on to it.
Another time, you and I'll have a
Really,
conversation
yes, yes.
about energy.
I know, and we could go ramble on.
I could talk for hours on that one.
Oh man, we will do a part two, most definitely. So, but we'll go ahead and wrap it up. Um, if you had any encouraging words for anyone out there right now, what would you tell them?
Oh man, let me tell you. Um, there are several pieces of advice that I have for people. One is, if you don't believe in yourself, no one's going to.
Mm-hmm.
It all starts with you. The second thing is that learning to manage your thoughts and how you process information will completely and totally change your life. When you learn how to process information, when you learn that there's no good news and there's no bad news, there's only news,
Mm-hmm.
it's just information. And how you process it is up to you. When you learn that skill set, it truly changes your life. And the third thing that I would tell people is, be very careful about who you surround yourself with, because ultimately that's who you will become. Think of it like this: an art museum curates the art on its wall. It doesn't just put random pictures up on the wall. It puts pictures that make sense to be on that wall, because the story that it's telling supports the overall theme of that show. And you need to think of the people that you surround yourself with in your life in exactly the same way. I audition my friends. I mean, that's really what it is. When I need someone new, I'm auditioning that person, and I'm deciding whether that person has something of value to teach me, because I know I have value to teach them,
Yes,
because I believe in myself.
yes.
So when you get to that place in the world, that's when you really truly begin to make a difference in the universe that we live in. And I think that those three things: learning to manage your thoughts and emotions, uh, being careful of who you surround yourself with, and more importantly, guarding the information that you allow into your mind. A lot of people don't realize this, but in today's society, I was having this conversation with one of my prison buddies just the other day. When we wake up in the morning, what's the first thing we do?
Pick up our phone.
We do this, right?
Yep, pick up our phone.
Do you know? Let me tell you what you're doing. You're letting 100 people in your head,
Hmm.
and 98 of them are going to have negative messages.
Yes.
So why are you starting your day
I don't know.
with negative messaging?
But we do. It's like,
What do we
let's get them
do?
out there today.
Tony, it's been an absolute pleasure
Oh
to
man, it's
speak with
been a
you.
pleasure, man. Thank you for coming on. We're definitely going to connect
Absolute
again.
pleasure. I'm
Um,
so happy to be a part of your podcast. I send you blessings, love, and joy to you and all your followers, and I wish you nothing but the best.
and same here. Thank you for being on, and for the followers. Make sure you guys subscribe, click, leave a comment, tell us what you think about the episode. And until next time, thank you for allowing me to serve you. You guys, I love you, and keep your head up.
Take care, my friend.